It's just organic that we talk about Kyle Kuzma, bad design wear and his choice of clothes and things of that nature. But
I just want to be clear. No one at this table is able to be the fashion police.
That was exactly what I was saying before the show. Like, I'm not in a position to ever criticize a player's fashion.
Maybe Devon. I
don't pat myself back, but I feel like I could dress a little bit.
The bookends of the table. No fashion
Kyle
police.
Kuzma, the choice of clothing sometimes, I'm scratching my head, you know. But hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to PHLY Sixers podcast on this Tuesday as we discuss the 76ers offseason. And as always, things just come out of nowhere in the offseason where names just start to pop up. The NBA draft lottery was Saturday, and as a result, different things start to come to light of what certain teams, it may not be true, but at least there's something to tail on to discuss about certain teams. And as we do that, we get into a name that we just talked about, his fashion choices. He's a pretty decent basketball player. How decent is he for you to want him on your basketball team? We will start things off with Kyle Kuzma, who are we, of course, as always, Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, I'm Devon Givens, Brianna, all of you in the chat. You guys are active already in the chat as soon as you drop that name. Kuz! Well,
there are no shortage of opinions.
There
on
are
Kyle
opinions,
Kuzma.
whether it's the fashion, hair, shot selection, what going to certain teams if you're maybe asked to be, if you want to be traded. There are things to talk about. And he is a hot button topic, so let's discuss it. The Washington Wizards, as we talked about the draft yesterday with more LeBron James and Bronny James with the Sixers. Would you like the Sixers to take a look at Bronny James and potentially going after him with the second-round pick at 41? Well, the Washington Wizards, we skipped over them yesterday when we talked about Atlanta getting number 1, Houston getting number 3. Washington has number 2, and there's a report out there from Hoops Hype, Derek, that discusses Washington wanting a third potential first-round pick. And because of that, we've discussed the Sixers, 85% right now is how we feel that they would be looking to move that 16th overall pick. So as a result, we just kind of went over some names, but we landed on Kyle Kuzma. What are your initial thoughts? Not fashion, not the hair, the basketball player, and how he might fit here in Philadelphia.
Drip cam with D-Bod, is that the new segment?
It's definitely not a new thing.
See if we can get a sponsor for that.
It'll be a t-shirt or a hoodie pretty much every day.
That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. Your thoughts? Kyle Kuzma.
I guess I'll start off with the good of Kyle Kuzma. He's on a reasonable contract, on a... What are these? I should have that right up in front of me. It's like right around 21 million.
It's a decline here. I had the numbers.
25 million, or the 23 million this upcoming year, then 21.4 and 19.4. The contract is reasonable. Yeah. He's being paid role player money, which I think is reasonable.
And he's in his prime years, most notably on that contract.
I just don't like the basketball player.
Fair enough. See, this is where we go.
He's talented, sure. And Kyle will bring up that back during his Lakers career, he filled a role more capably than maybe over the last couple of years.
Me.
We talked about it before the show. I'm putting words in your mouth. You literally said it. And there's some validity to that. I sat here before the show and watched a whole lot of his shot decision-making. And the argument is maybe he will revert back to how he played with the Lakers when he's surrounded by more talent. There's a chance that happens. But there's also a chance that he has become so enamored with being a featured player. And I'm just sitting there and watching. And one thing I brought up, first of all, he's never really been a great catch-and-shoot player. He's had various seasons, even unguarded catch-and-shoot shots. He's generally below league average, which isn't great. Like in a role player, you want them to be able to knock those down consistently. He's had a year or two here and there where he's been above league average. For the most part, he's been like the 35th, the 40th percentile, which isn't really good enough. And again, those are on unguarded catch-and-shoot shots. But man, this dude loves the 30% dribble jumper more than anyone I've ever, not anyone, but he likes it way too much. And we're talking about trying to slot in a player in a role alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And clearly, this wouldn't be like the Sixers' number one option. This isn't who they're targeting. I don't think it would be close to the number one option. But the problem is, if the premise is the Wizards want to make a move to get a pick at this draft, Sixers aren't going to be in a position to do that, because if we're talking about option like, I don't even think we're talking about option like C, D, E, or F. We're talking like option like M. if the Sixers are going to have to get to that point, they're going to have to go through the start of free agency before they come to that conclusion. It's going to be after the draft. It's going to be after when Washington is looking to make this deal. I don't necessarily see a match between these two teams. And quite frankly, like I said, outside of the contract, I just don't like the player. I think he's, like I said, I'm putting a lot, especially over the last couple of years, I'm putting a lot of value in decision-making and reliable decision-making and reliable shooting. And that's just not Kyle Kuzma.
So, as Derek pointed out and stole my thunder, the big question for me is, well, it's two-pronged. Which version of Kyle Kuzma are you getting? But more pertinently, what version of Kyle Kuzma does Kyle Kuzma want to be? When he came into the league, he joined a Lakers team that at first he got to stretch his wings a little bit, but as LeBron comes to town and then it becomes the LeBron James show, as every team that he's ever played for does, he then becomes a complimentary role player rather than, this is one of the faces of the franchise, one of the featured players. And as Kuzma transitioned into that sort of role, there was real buy-in, and you could see, how he could be part of a winning team, a winning culture, right? Like, as Derek said, the shooting numbers have never been as good as they've needed to be. Even his rookie season, and I believe his fourth season, were his best years shooting, and even they were 36%, about 36.5% from three overall. That's barely above average. You would take it on the volume that he's offering you, because he's taken 6+ threes a game for most of his career, which is good volume for a role player. But more importantly, you're getting that. You're getting the closeout ability. You're getting a guy who can, if necessary, go down to the mid-post, hunt some matchups, do some things with the face-up game, things like that. More importantly to me, on the other side of the ball, I think he is a good and tough defender against the bigger wing types. Like, if you need to beat the Bostons of the world to get to a finals or even get to a conference finals, we got to take our baby steps here in Philadelphia. I think he's somebody who can at least match up in size and physicality with Tatum and Brown. Now, I would call him something close to like the Millionaires version of Kelly Oubre in that way, where a lot of the same problems exist, right? Like the off-ball attentiveness, the awareness, those problems were not as bad in LA, are now glaring in Washington. And you could say he's on a bad team, but part of the reason the team is bad is that he is being asked to be a featured player for them. And Devon brought up, close to the open of the show, that he mentioned the trade that didn't happen. So for anybody who doesn't know, the reporting was out there that Dallas tried to trade for Kuzma before they traded for PJ Washington. And Kuzma gave a direct quote about it after the deadline and essentially said he was approached by Washington's president of basketball ops, and the decision was left to him whether he wanted to go to Dallas or stay in Washington. And Kuzma told Washington's president directly he wanted to stay and continue to build something. What that suggests is that Kyle Kuzma right now is content being the man or something close to the man in Washington. And so if you're a GM like Morey or somebody leading a contending hopeful team, you see that and say, well, this guy is not coming here wanting to be LA Kyle Kuzma. He wants to be blonde hair, drip cam, take 20 shots a game, take a bunch of contested mid-range jumpers type of player. That's not going to get it done. And if you're talking about, as Derek said, that's fallback option, let's call it G or H or somewhere in that territory, that would push him even further down. But we're only discussing Kyle Kuzma if everything else goes to shit, right? If you know that Paul George is staying in LA, if you know LeBron is staying in LA or going to Cleveland or somewhere that doesn't involve you, if Pat Riley is saying, give us 4 first-round picks for Jimmy Butler or get the hell out of my face. Like, you go down the list, It's just that Kuzma is going to be available. And I know there's been a lot of chatter about, well, the Sixers should try to get role players and get a few good role players, high-end guys, rather than chasing a star and looking for younger players. So to me, this is what that looks like, right? Like he's an imperfect player, but he's on a pretty good contract. He's right in the years that you need to be at 29, 30, 31 in order to try to help Joel and Tyrese win now. But there's a lot of downside because for example, if you put him and Kelly Oubre on the floor at the same time, I think Joel will probably have more gray hairs after that season than he did coming into it.
Him and me both.
So the guys have laid out everything about Kyle Kuzma at this point of his career. We already know who he is. The question is, which one are you going to get? You know both sides because we've seen it, winning a championship with LA and then going to Washington, signing that extension and staying with that dreaded franchise right now instead of going to a situation where he might be playing that PJ Washington role currently for the Dallas Mavericks in the second round of the playoffs. What is his where's he mentally? What does he want to do? And right now, it just seems like that's what he wants to do, be able to take as many shots as he wants, along with Jordan Poole, get a little frustrated from time to time, but all eyes are on them, win or lose, because that's what he's done. He's got his money. He's won his championship. And at this point, he is still the face of the franchise. Even with the number 2 overall pick, everything is still going to run through Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole for this upcoming season, at least for right now. Is he willing to, though, take that step back, look himself in the mirror at the age of 27, 28, and look at a situation like Philadelphia and see an opportunity where winning again is important to him, playing that third role behind Embiid and Maxey. And right now, I just don't think that's where he is. I haven't focused a lot on Washington except for when we had a little fun during the season because they were awful. They stunk. And it was real, and he was a big part of that. Now his numbers look good at averaging 22 and 6 on the season. But what did that do? It did nothing. And if he's willing to accept that instead of going to a situation like Dallas to play with Luka, and I'm not saying that Luka Doncic is the easiest person to play with, because we also saw an opportunity where Jalen Brunson left the situation as probably the number 2 behind Luka Doncic in Dallas to go to New York, where you didn't know it was going to turn to this, but he had enough belief that it was going to be a much better, a more stable situation than what Washington currently is right now, firing their head coach. All of the turmoil going on in the front office, moving from Washington potentially to Virginia, all of those things, yet he's still willing.
I keep forgetting about all that.
He's still willing to stay there.
Yeah,
so that's the uncomfortable part when speaking about him outside of the negative parts on the floor where he wants to shoot a lot of mid-range shots. And is he going to decide, I got to squeeze off because I'm not getting enough shots here because Maxey and Embiid are doing too much here. When is my turn? When is enough going to be enough for me? Is that his thinking out there on the basketball floor? So that's the difficult spot with him. And a lot of these players, quite frankly, where we've talked about Brandon Ingram, is he going to want to be in a situation like this? If it's not Paul George, Jimmy Butler, who you know can blend in. Understand that they can do it.
Well, in the Jimmy way.
The Jimmy way, yeah.
Jimmy Butler doesn't blend in he blends in at times as a player, but guy with that personality.
But you also know what you're getting with it, that it's going to help lead to winning. Can Kyle Kuzma in a updated role now coming to Philadelphia lead to winning if he's willing to accept the situation that's in front of him with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey being the faces?
If he's willing to accept it, I think absolutely. Like, it's not a perfect skill set, and we do it. There's some people like Brandon in the chat, for example, says we'll be complaining about Kuzma the same way we complain about Tobias.
No,
I do not agree with that.
Yeah.
He is very much he is more in the Kelly school of he will stand out sometimes in a loud and aggressive way because he does not have that little voice in the back of Tobias's head that tells him no and, hey, don't take that shot and step out of an open three. Like, that does not exist for Kyle Kuzma. And I do think there's upside to that, right? Like, he's someone that in a big game, the ball's going to swing to him. If he's 0 for, I say it all the time with Kelly, he might be 0 for 7. He might have missed a bunch of shots in a row. He will take the shot, But how you feel about him taking that shot in that moment is going to be based on whether he makes it or not. He doesn't approach it that way. I do like the level of fearlessness that he plays with. And as I said, like I think the positive with him compared to some guys, I talk about this a lot, right? Like the situations dictate how guys play, how they think and all that. And trying to project how, for example, like a Zach LaVine or a Bradley Beal, some of these guys we talked about last year, whether they want to come and be about the right things and defend and all that. At least in Kyle Kuzma's case, we have documented proof that in the right situation, he will do the things that add up to winning. Like it's not the same as some of these other guys who have been career losers who, are gunning for shots, gunning for their stats and just care about the contract. And because he is locked in on, around, I think the average over the next few years is like $21 million, right? Because he is locked in on that, he doesn't necessarily have to go out and think about, okay, I got to hit this number and do this and do that to get my next deal. If he were to come here and be, whether it's the third option, fourth option, depending on how the roster shakes out, if he is just the high-end version of himself, the guy who will defend top players, knock down some open shots, be a good secondary option in backup units, whether that's next to Joel, whether that's as a guy next to Tyrese Maxey, he'll still only be, I believe, 31 when the next contract comes. He can get a good role player contract like the one he's on now. Again, like I firmly believe that those types of players are valued a lot. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a good example. He's making $15+ million. The odds are he's going to opt out after this season. He's slightly older than Kuzma, and he's going to get probably 20 to 25 million per over, let's say, the next few years. So there is a path for him coming, whether it's here or a place like Philadelphia, buying into that role and being a helpful piece and making himself long-term money. It's just hard to know if he wants to. And based on what he said following the non-trade to Dallas, it does sort of seem like because he won early, because he was able to, he got his championship early, now he kind of wants to spread his wings and see what he can be as a 1 or a 2 on a different sort of team. And that's not to say he's wrong. Like he wants to see what he can do as a building block of the team, but that complicates things for somebody like a team like the Sixers who need him to play a very different role.
Yeah. And we have Khalil in the chat saying that we poo-poo everyone. We don't like anyone. And I think Khalil, his version of the player that he's looking for as a third option is almost a complete different. Like the archetype that he seems to like is very different than the archetype that I like, pursue. But like Kuzma's teammate, Deni Avdija, sure, I'd be 100% interested in that. Caruso, if we're going the role player route, even if those players cost more, and I think they would, especially Deni, he's younger.
Yeah.
But I think
he's on a cheaper contract, which
like
also
15 mil and declining.
It,
yeah. But those kinds of players, I would have way more interest in pursuing to be a role player than someone like Kuzma.
So just to be clear, yes, we talked about Avdija too. Yeah, we recognize it too. It just it may cost you a little bit more, and would they be willing to give that player up?
But
any kind
to
of
his
deal?
point, it's not that like we dislike everyone. Like we've talked about Paul George and Jimmy Butler. We haven't poo-pooed those. There's certain, and now we're talking about role players.
I've been higher on Paul George than basically every single person who watches the show.
And there's role players that we would pursue. I just don't. I don't trust Kyle Kuzma at this stage of his career to slide back into being a role player. And there are two things that I value in a slot. If we're talking about role player money and role player outlay of assets, I want a reliable shooter and a reliable decision maker. I just don't trust Kuzma for either of them. And if you're going to say, well, 6 years ago with the Lakers, he was not terrible at those, I just need a little more to bank on.
Is he on the same tier as Brandon Ingram, as we talked about that?
I think
just because the style of play which you didn't like. You like certain things,
so I like Brandon
but the
Ingram.
negatives.
There's similarities. I like Brandon Ingram better as a player, but Brandon Ingram I think is going to cost a lot more money when his next contract is up after this year, and that would be my concern. But as a player, I like Brandon Ingram, but there are some similarities in the fact that they're just not good enough at any real one thing. I think those types of players tend to become overrated pretty quickly. They're not actually that efficient of a scorer. They're not that good of a creator. I like his defense probably better than his offense. There's a little bit of Kelly Oubre in that respect as well. But no, I just don't I don't trust that offensive productivity nearly enough.
You know who I really trust?
Who's that?
Our good friends at Olipop.
We can get Kuzma Olipop.
Maybe that would turn him into the player that everyone needs him to be. But guys, Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. It is available online and in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores, where you can scoop a classic root beer or a strawberry vanilla at a Wawa near you. As I tell you guys quite often, I've been a big soda drinker throughout my life. It's tasty, right? Like it goes good with certain types of foods, certain types of meals. But as you have to start thinking about your health, whether that's your dental, your gut, all kinds of other impacts that your beverage consumption has on your life and your health, you start to think, man, can I really keep this in my diet? Well, Olipop allows you to get what you want from soda, which is that great taste, the complement to the things you're eating, and you don't have to worry about what it's doing to your body because Olipop is much, much lower in sugar than conventional sodas with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar, all coming from natural sources. None of it's added. Their vintage cola, just as an example, has 2 grams of sugar compared to 39 grams of sugar in a regular Coca-Cola. And they have plenty of classic flavors, so whatever suits you. I bet you Olipop has it. For example, Derek over there today, sipping a nice watermelon lime, a nice refreshing summer flavor, but they also have things like vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, cherry cola. They got all kinds of stuff, something for everybody. The Good Luck Devon ginger ale,
yes,
drinking during playoff games. If you want to check out Olipop to see what we talk about on this show quite often, use the code PHLY20 for 20% off of your next Olipop order. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff. I also have another beverage friend that I know you guys.
Some of the pro Kuzma people out there that are mad at us, they might want to choose chill a little bit.
There are some people out there.
Or you might have to after one of his games where he shoots 3 for 16.
They're the day-to-day annoyances, like your favorite Sixers podcast, are not liking Kyle Kuzma as much as you. They can get you worked up. You can be at work. You can be at home. You're on a study break at school, whatever it is. There's a better way, guys. There's a chiller way than yelling at Derek that he doesn't know basketball. You can choose chill, and you can reach for an ice-cold Coors Light. And with Coors Light, you know you're getting an ice-cold beer because the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans when they hit the perfect temperature for consumption. Guys, we are going to have a long summer ahead, early summer certainly, leading into free agency. We're going to be debating players. It's going to get hot. People are going to get ornery. Someone's HVAC system's going to break down, and they're just going to be mad about that while they're mad about Kyle Kuzma or Brandon Ingram or Paul George or whoever it might be. But when you need that refreshing, cold-layered, cold-filtered, cold-packaged beer with a smooth finish, Coors Light will be there for you. You will get mountain cold refreshment as we try to talk you down, ask you to choose the chiller way as you deal with all the aggravation the Sixers will more than likely cause you over the next couple of months. You can choose to rise above it all by choosing chill and choosing Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
So get to the Deni Avdija part, because we discussed him, and just to be clear, we see his name a lot there in the chat. Derek brought him up, and we did discuss him at the start of the show. More of that would be somebody that we would have interest in. The contract is very good. He's a player that can do multiple things out there on the floor. He can handle the ball, play with his back to the basket if he needs to, shoot over the smaller defender with the height advantage that he does have. Defensively, decent enough, especially not having to be the guy as a defender. But you would also think that Washington might want to continue to build with him versus some of the other older players that they have. So why would it be so difficult for some people who want him in there? We have to mention it because we're talking about Washington. We're not looking at Jordan Poole. He's probably only going to be Deni Avdija or Kyle Kuzma. So why would it be so difficult to acquire him? What would you look at it as Washington really just wants to keep it going with him?
Well, one, he's much younger, right? I believe he's only 23 and he'll be 24 next January. He's on a very affordable, team-friendly contract over that time. After signing an extension, I believe it was in late October last year, he then had by far his best individual season ever. Best shooting season,
really showed
over 37% from three, was a better playmaker this year, was just like a higher volume offensive player for them. On top of he's got some defensive versatility, good size, can defend several positions, all that. And
can rebound, can create a little off the bounce.
All of that on a team that, like, as we're saying, hey, Kyle Kuzma was just, out for shots and out for this and out for that on that team. Like, Deni, for the most part, still seemed like he was about the right things, like is not taking crazy shots, is trying to do the little things that contribute to winning. And that's why, especially a team like Washington that's trying to build this from the ground up and wants to have some semblance of culture as they, try to reload through the draft and the various means, it's not somebody they're going to give up lightly. So he's probably going to require, if they were to move him at all, he's going to require an overpay. And I don't think a 23-year-old role player, even one who's good, is somebody the Sixers are in the business of overpaying. If they're going to overpay with picks, they're going to overpay for either star-level talent at the highest possible tier, or it's going to be someone slightly below that tier that fits their age timeline a little bit better. And I would also say, even though he had his best three-point shooting season last year, that is the outlier, and he also has pretty low volume on his threes. Like, he only took about 3 a game last year, and how much do you trust
And he'll have
it?
some pretty wild left-right misses. Like, there will be there's some inconsistency for sure. No, when I brought him up, it's less of he should be a target, because I do think, to Kyle's point, you'd probably have to overpay to get him. And with the Sixers in a star-hunting mode, even if his salary is low, giving up multiple first-round picks for him would be tough to then go out and have the flexibility to make the moves that we know Daryl is looking to make. It's more like that's the kind of archetype of role player. If we are going the role player route, that's more of the kind of style of player I would look for than someone like Kuzma. Not necessarily like I think they can get him or he should be a target, because I agree with Kyle's general point that you would have to overpay for him because they are in no rush to move him.
Oh, he's a good player, man. I mean, just a really good player in a bad situation in Washington. And if you can somehow convince them again. Sometimes in these situations,
I should have known Phil W. would be a Kuzma guy. Very on brand.
When you go to look at Washington again, just laying out what their organization is, they are a bad organization. Can you take advantage of that organization and maybe get something out of them? And you win that trade, you win that deal. Is that possible? Of course, we don't know right now because they have the number 2 overall pick. They selected another nice player last year in the lottery, Bilal Coulibaly. Solid player.
That's your boy, man.
Nice
player.
player.
A lot about Coulibaly. From
Nice
Devon
player
over the last year.
But he and Deni Avdija, together, plus whatever they do at the number 2 pick, that could be a building block for them. And that's why you shift over to the Kyle Kuzma piece. Nobody's taking Jordan Poole, at least for right now. No. So you're stuck with him. So can they add to that, get that 3rd pick there in the first round? And what are they trying to do with that? Are they keeping it? Are they trying to get something else to come into Washington?
The gears are turning on my head. I wonder if they were to get a 3rd first and consider that they have control of other stuff moving forward, do you think they could be a Trae Young suitor? That they got a couple with young wings, like guys on the, and then if you can get any kind of big in there.
That's just so nasty and dirty. Him and Jordan Poole in the backcourt together.
Listen,
oh my God!
I know, but I'm saying, look, I'm trying to look at it from Washington's perspective. Like, if you're trying to just load up on firsts in a kind of bad draft, are you loading up on those because you actually want those firsts, or because you're trying to turn those plus future capital?
I get you
into a guy who, for whatever his flaws are, would do a lot of things that they need from the playmaking and all that.
Oh, that's nasty. Oh, that's a nasty basketball to watch.
Well, listen, that Jordan Poole is not starting with him if that happens. You you bench him and you say goodbye. And if you don't like it, you can sit your ass at home.
that would be something. Yeah, Trae Young in Washington. I mean, look, as far as the ticket goes, you need those.
And you
know
they're always
fans.
concerned about that.
Yeah, you need someone, especially after trying to move the team to another part of the DMV. You want to try to sell tickets, and could you do something like that to pull in Trae Young? Potentially, yeah, because I don't see where you're going to get any of those other names. I just don't. Yeah, I don't see any other potential. Or even
like, what
names.
about DeJounte? Maybe if we're saying that Trae is going to stay there,
that's a better fit.
You get I would say defensive-minded guard, but I've said on the show, and plenty of other people who paid closer attention to the Hawks have said as much. DeJounte was horrible defensively last year. I know he had his moments in San Antonio, like was at that like all defense type level, and people have set. Once you have a reputation as a good defender, it's hard to shake that, even if you're playing poorly. Again, we'd have to see if that's contextual, but if you put DeJounte next to the likes of Coulibaly, Deni, those guys, maybe you start building something there. Not sure.
Yeah. Ooh, Trae Young and Jordan Poole. Nasty.
Very nasty.
Very, very nasty. Well, that would be a lot to talk about. They'll be right back in the lottery, folks. Right back in the lottery with a situation like that. But I do have to tell you, as we talk about, they're trying to figure out, as I'm looking at Twitter right away, it just pops up. Pass. No to Kyle Kuzma. Nobody wants Kyle Kuzma here in Philadelphia. Some say yes, some say no. Is he Tobias Harris? Better player. And we'll get to that when we get back to the conversation. But I have to tell you, as again, we start to see the weather change a bit. It's very nice outside right now. The sun's not out, but it doesn't mean in about a week and a half when you're out on the beach celebrating the holiday weekend, you have the extended weekend, you're out on the beach with your family and your friends, and you're looking at yourself pre-beach visit, and how can I make myself look right? Of course, I've been going to the gym, pumping iron, doing my sit-ups and all that stuff. But
you're just throwing that in there because Martian called you out last time.
Hey. You doing push-ups to soul music like Kendrick Lamar at a playground on top of that
with the Manscaped Clipper buzzing right there in the back. 5.0, baby, with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. This ultimate all-in-one grooming kit is set to have you looking and feeling your best in the summer sun as you get ready to have that beach bod. Trust Manscaped and unlock the confidence that you'll need to turn heads this season. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped.com for your 20% off plus free shipping with code PHLY. And let's make the summer your smoothest one yet. You do that on your own. I'm over here minding my business. But if you want to know a little bit more about it, embrace your summer bod goals with the all-inclusive Performance Package 5.0. Perfect for those aiming for that crisp, clean, and confident look. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Groin and Body Hair Trimmer helps for that summer makeover as well. It's waterproof, designed, and splashy pool parties and beach hangouts have you all covered right there. As far as your nose and your ears, you don't want the nose and the ears having all the hair growing out of there either. Well, that's why they have the Weed Whacker 2.0 for you to get that pesky hair out of there. Deodorant, you need that. You need that in that area. A little sunny out, you're traveling to Miami maybe, and you're visiting some of those hotter areas. Those sunny beach days, the anti-chafing ball deodorant, let the sun see you shine, but not sweat. And you can also, surprise, your purchase will come with free boxers, 2.0 Midnight Bravo, the comfort and the style that fit you like a dream. So to get all of that, to get involved, check them out, of course, at manscaped.com to get 20% off plus free shipping with code PHLY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com. The summer sun is here to stay, so trust Manscaped to keep your pubes at bay.
Also want to make sure we tell you about Game Time, which is Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA.
You got it this time.
Hey, it wasn't me who screwed that one up. No. Authorized, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier, or in this instance, getting Phillies tickets. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer deals on last-minute tickets, All-in prices, views of your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. One of the great benefits of Game Time is you can buy tickets at the very last second, and you can save up to 60% off by buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. And with flash deals, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And of course, with Game Time, you know what you get before you buy with a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. And the Game Time guarantee means you will always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
When you did the authorized thing, it made me think of Beverly Hills Cop 2 and Judge Reinhold and Eddie Murphy were trying to stop the robbery from happening. And they're trying to get them to open the gates outside. And the guard is like, I need authorization. And they shoot, open the gate and yell out, authorized. Just like Game Time.
Yeah. See, I can't quote that one off the top of my head, but the first one for sure.
That's my favorite movie of all
Banana
time.
and Tailpipe, man. Not gonna fall for it.
Nope. Damon Wayans, right there, man. Yeah.
Bit of a pause moment on that one nowadays, but it wasn't back then.
Very true. Some great performances. Bronson Pinchot.
Gotta love the Wayans brothers.
Oh yeah.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Which one? Hold on.
I can tell you.
I'm gonna go on
Which one? What's the question?
No.
Covered.
Which Wayans brother? I think it was it Damon who was supposed to be Robin in Batman Returns?
Really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
See?
Didn't know it was either Damon or Marlon.
No, it was Marlon.
It was
Wayans.
Marlon, yes.
Okay, so what happened was,
yes,
we're completely off.
That's all right. It's the summertime.
So
Almost.
The
Off-season.
original plan leading out of, I believe it was Batman Returns, was if Tim Burton did another movie, Marlon Wayans was going to be like ascend into the Robin role. And he still gets Batman residuals because of this. He signed a deal. He signed to play Robin, and then I don't know the full backstory behind it. He's done interviews about it, but got a great agent, right? He's getting Batman residuals for a role he didn't end up playing. So shout out to Marlon Wayans. I can see it
because, of course, we know him for their comedic chops. But when I saw him in G.I. Joe, whatever one that was, it was G.I. Joe Cobra something. And I was like, oh, I mean, of course he has his chops for the comedic part, but he played that role well for this action movie. So I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that. The family is fantastic, though. All of them, except for Sean. He's the worst. Not funny at all. This is not breaking news. Sean Wayans does not fit into the timeline of what everybody else has going on, from Keenan to Damon to Marlon. They missed on Sean. they missed, but he made money.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. Doesn't touch everybody with talent, I guess. He was the proper amount of talent.
He was in good movies, but that's because his brother was there too. So Kim was also funny. He was not.
Yeah.
So but hey, that's how that goes. I'm telling you, man, people, and that's where Gene says, Devon, we're getting into the August topics. We'll get there in August, Gene. We got a lot of time.
I will not be here.
Had to bring up the authorized part. Had to bring up. See, Lil says it. So true. Sean, terrible. Gene, I didn't forget. I said Kim. Kim was funny as well. All right, let's get back to the basketball.
So, you guys watched the games last night?
Watched the games last night.
That OKC win was, after watching the early stages of it, that's one of the more improbable playoff
No, they
wins
look dead
that
in the
I think
water.
I've seen.
They look completely dead in the water.
And I think the more that I've watched this has been true for a long time, but the more I've watched these playoffs, the clearer it is to me that NBA coaches in today's day and age need to be so much quicker to just identify this guy can't play in the playoffs.
Yep.
Because the Josh Giddey thing in OKC is just insane. Like, the fact that he still started. Now, at halftime, they made the swap. They played Isaiah Joe in his spot and tried to open things up and whatnot. And weirdly enough, last night, I believe, was the only positive game for Giddey in the plus-minus department of the playoffs, certainly of this series.
What was it, like 2 for 8?
He is not good, and he had some just ghastly turnovers, and he had the one offensive foul in the second half that I was like, I have no investment in this series or game, and I'm yelling at the TV like, get this fucking bozo off the court, right? But the future of the league, and the present of the league, I should say, are the Case and Wallaces of the world as role players, right? Like, I actually saw somebody, and I thought this was a fairly smart comparison. I think he's probably in the like DeAnthony Melton territory as a player, right? Like a versatile defender, not necessarily great at any one thing offensively, but can do enough. Those are the types of guys you need to just load your team up with, because you cannot. Maybe Josh Giddey still has value as a 82 game guy, someone who can eat some ball handling reps, and you give rest to Shea and J-Dub and all those other guys. But when you get to the playoffs, that guy just cannot play because nobody guards him. They're gonna hang back off him and say, if you're not gonna shoot, we're gonna let you stand there. And then Shea and Jalen Williams and Chet and these other guys are going to have to attack a paint that is going to be collapsed on them every single time. But that fourth quarter from Shea and Jalen Williams was unbelievable. Mostly Shea, but because Jalen Williams had a bad game overall. But what an incredible closing act for those guys last night.
I actually thought, you remember it was about under 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter when they had already come back and he was trying to ice the game.
Yeah.
And Shea took a fadeaway jumper that went in and out. It just basically circled the rim.
I thought for sure it was going in.
So did I, right. But that to your point is the arrival happened probably about 2 seasons ago, but he's really starting to cement himself, of course. Number 2, finishing in the ballots for the MVP. First team All NBA last season, probably again this season in that backcourt with Luka. And that guy is just so good. And I did not, folks, watching the game, think at all that they were going to win that basketball game. I thought Dallas still had the momentum, even though the run was being made by OKC. I thought there was one left in Dallas to close the game out at home.
They got Luka and Kyrie.
Exactly.
Right? Like they got the closers.
And you also had PJ Washington just playing a really good basketball game last night once again. So I thought it was done. And then it wasn't. And it was partly because of course, Jalen Williams for what he did, but certainly with Shea, you get the plays made from Lou Dort defensively, hitting a big three-pointer. Kason Wallace had 2 above the break, well, on the wing, but kind of secondary fast break where he knocked down 2 important three-pointers on the wing, as you talk about Kason Wallace as a number 10 overall pick, playing his backup role and playing his role really well. And to have the comparison already in the playoff situation as a veteran like DeAnthony Melton, because it certainly wasn't DeAnthony Melton from when he was a rookie or a second-year player. It's this current version of DeAnthony Melton. And that's where, when we discussed even on the other side of the 16th pick yesterday and saying, okay, well, what if they do decide to keep that 16 just because you need players like that? Is there somebody in there? And you brought up a good name that was on the show a lot while we didn't talk about him, Devin Carter from Providence, as a 6'3" guard. Is that the type with that defensive profile that he has, but he can also put the ball on the floor and knock down the shot. He has a weird release. It's like an elongated release from bringing it way down, but that's the type of conversation we were having.
Two-way guys.
You do keep that 16.
It's been clear for a very long time, right? You can't be a one side of the ball player in the playoffs. Certainly not. This has always been kind of true, but I think it's even more pronounced now because of how the game has evolved and how spread out the floor is. Like, you got to have guys who are locked in away from the ball, who aren't liabilities on the ball, who on the other side of the floor can knock down a 3, but can also take somebody off the bounce and also play make if they need to, just a little bit. Like, just make Melton is a great example of this, like the connective passes. Like, he's in the middle of the floor, sees it, hits the extra one, knows when to make a swing pass, knows when to take a good shot versus a great shot. And the bar is high to be a playoff rotation player. And it's why you see rotations shrink to 8 guys in the first round. Sometimes in the finals, you're getting down to like 7, maybe 6 guys in extreme examples playing, because to be able to win a title and to stay on the floor against the elite of the elite in games where the stars are playing 40 plus minutes, you have to do almost everything at least an average level on the basketball court. There are very few players who can be true specialists, whose specialist skill is good enough that they can hang once you get to a tough second round series, but certainly conference finals and the finals.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things to touch on there. First of all, I think keeping the pick, I would love, my natural inclination is to keep the pick. I would love to get infusion of young talent in here. It's really the contract, the guaranteed $4 million, and also just the fact that that's one chip you can throw in there in a mega trade. I would love to see them trade down, like maybe get an early second round pick and a future pick or something of that ilk, so you don't have that guaranteed cap hit. You get a chance to take another swing at a pretty valuable pick and a player who could develop and also maybe get some trade equity. That's sort of like my dream scenario, because I would love to come away from this draft with some, and this is a draft where like 16 and 35 might not be all that different. Right. Obviously you get less opportunity, but the quality of prospect might not be all that different. But just the cap hit, I think, almost alone. And the fact that it is one of their two more valuable trade chips makes it, I think, unlikely. I will say, going back to OKC, obviously, like Shea and Chet and J-Dub are going to get a lot of the attention, but there's so much growth and development and players coming into their own and coming onto this stage that it is fun to watch, whether that's Isaiah Joe, and you talked about being a two-way player. I think Joe's defense has improved over the years.
He's definitely gotten better,
to the point where I think he can hang defensively. Not going to be great, but I think he can hang, and that's all you need when the shot is what it is. There's just Lou Dort, I think, is having a coming out party, and he's been really good for a while now, but I think everyone's now seeing what kind of
last season his
contributor.
playoffs wasn't as good as this one.
And I
this
think
really
everyone's seeing what kind of impactful defender he can be. And it's just fun watching that team. It's been real, real fun. And for them to steal that win, 2-2, going back home, I honestly, I wouldn't say I'm rooting for them because we are still sort of like media, but they're just fun to watch, and I hope their season extends.
I just like seeing the young team succeed when everyone coming in is like, oh, they're a fraud, fluke, number one seed and all that. And that was a great example of a game that young teams almost never win, right? Like they played terribly for 2.5, maybe even as much as you could argue, like 3/4 of that game. And they gave it to their 25-year-old star, and he just absolutely dominated that game down the stretch, showed a level of composure and shot making that is basically unmatched in the league. That shot he hit from behind the backboard on the baseline, that was like if that had happened in the 80s, Bob Ryan is still writing about Larry Bird doing that to this day. Like, oh my God, you've never seen anything like this. And that was just one of like 3 or 4 insane shots or plays that Shea made last night.
By the way, you've seen him make that shot.
Yeah, that's not the first time he's done it.
Right, yeah.
And it's just cool seeing these guys respond to the challenge, right? Like they have not been here as a group before. They do not have these reps. And the criticism was, you're not going to be able to do this in the playoffs. And maybe they still lose this series, right? But they have at least shown they belonged. I think they have probably learned at this point, okay, we have these keepers, and now Josh Giddey needs to get the hell out of town for whatever you can get for him, more than likely, right? But This was a great, like, we've talked on the show a lot about they've got this stockpile of picks, and how are they going to use it? Are they going to use it for trades? Well, this is basically the best case scenario for them. They're having their cake, and they can eat it too, it looks like. So awesome stuff for them. And to Derek's point about team building stuff, if you're asking me what an ideal offseason looks like for the Sixers, it would be holding on to that 16th pick, drafting. It doesn't necessarily have to be Devin Carter, but let's say it's Devin Carter for the sake of argument. A young, athletic, can defend, but also do some other stuff type of player. Add that guy, that developmental guy, into the mix. You trade for an Alex Caruso type. Doesn't have to be Caruso, but a high-end role player who's going to get after it at the point of attack, be a switchable defender, is a good off-ball player, doesn't really give a shit about how many shots he's getting or anything like that. You sign Paul George. You get the guy who helps raise the ceiling and the floor of the team, a willing shooter, a guy who can be a complimentary number 3. You bring back some of the important guys from last year's team, Batum, maybe Oubre, one of the guards, and you nail the vet minimum signings you're going to have to make after that. You still might have Ricky at that point. That's another developmental athlete on the team. That's a team that can compete. That's a team that has the necessary ingredients, assuming they're healthy, to go out there and try to play with just about anybody. Whether they can make that happen is obviously a big if at this point. But that, looking at who's left in the playoffs, what they need, what they haven't had over the last few years or so, that's what the ideal next few months look like, from my perspective anyway.
Also, with the OKC part, not worried about the center position starting-wise here because of Embiid, but I was very interested to see how Chet Holmgren will hold up through the playoffs. Of course, this is the second round, but I give him credit. The physicality that they play with over there with Derek Lively still active and physical, even though he's a young player. And then the same thing coming off the bench there with Gafford. He played really well last night, and he held up pretty darn good. So for them not to go and acquire another veteran big, curious of if he was be able to hold up because of his slight build and his first playoff run here. That team is fun, like you guys have already said, and just wanted to watch them as long as possible. Don't know if they can win the series, but, man, I think this thing is going 7. They'll at least have it on their floor.
3 different 2-2s, by the way. A pivotal Game 5's coming up.
So tonight we have 2 of them. We have Indiana and New York first. That's at 8 o'clock in New York. And then the 10:30 game, Minnesota and Denver, now tied at 2-2. Derek, your thoughts, though, first on the first one, New York and Indiana, 2-2, going back to New York. The Knicks beat up, of course.
Well, I mean, look, if the refs just start calling the Pacers holding on to Jalen Brunson, then the series is over.
Fair point.
Absolutely wild that of all the people in the league, not that Jalen himself is complaining, but the Knicks complaining about how Jalen Brunson is being refereed. It's just wild.
That was the best.
I understand we cover Joel Embiid. I know there's going to be a Knick fan in the comment pointing this out. We know. And by the way, we point out that he flops as well. But to complain about the whistle Jalen Brunson is getting, it's just freaking wild. When he jumps backwards into your face and somehow gets a foul call for it. That's my thoughts on that series.
Okay. All right. Pacers have a chance, though.
No, I honestly, I'm intrigued by what the Pacers do.
TJ and Obi Toppin coming off the bench, Ben Shepherd.
Knicks in 5 or 6 coming in. So this is a much better series.
So my worry for the Knicks was, do they come out after that rough and tumble first round series and give away one of the first 2? But it's been the opposite. They've now picked up multiple injuries. Brunson's ailing. OG, we don't know if he's going to return this series. They've been intentionally vague about kind of how he's doing. They're just running out of bodies. Yep. And credit to Indiana for taking advantage of that. But it looks like they're just going to lose New York, the war of attrition. So we'll see.
No, and OG being out is huge. The other series, I think they've got to Gobert's they've got to get the 2 big lineup. If it's going to be too big, I want 2 shooting big on there.
That's what we said. I thought Naz Reid should have been in the last 5 minutes of that game, and that's where I think the coaching staff lost it.
Yeah.
They were making that push. They were coming back, and he had 3 consecutive negative possessions there. The offensive foul, the turnover, and there was another one that he had. And when Jokic pulled the chair, then he does the money thing, which, by the way, he got fined again for $75K for that one. You have to put Naz Reid back in the game, especially when Karl-Anthony Towns is not shooting the ball well. You have to keep him on the floor, so you put Naz Reid back in the game. And I thought that's where the coaching staff lost that.
You just got to make Jokic's life just a tiny bit harder. Because the first 2 games of the series, it looked like Jokic was a little bit indecisive. And you never see Jokic indecisive. He looks much more comfortable. And even though no home team has won in this series, which is wild, them coming back to Denver 2-2, I think they're in a pretty good spot. That crisis is certainly averted, it looks like.
I just think the problem in that series for Minnesota right now is that if Aaron Gordon's hitting shots, you're basically dead in the water. I don't know how Jokic has figured out the coverages to a certain degree, right? And that's not surprising given his intelligence from the center of the floor and how he reads the game. But your only real chance is if you can leave Gobert roaming and he's the help behind Cat and you're just crowding the paint and he can't go anywhere. But Denver smartly moved Gordon out to the corner rather than in the dunker spot. And Jokic has been, whether it's Jokic directly or the swing passes that get to him, they're getting the ball to Gordon for open threes, and he's been absolutely on fire the last 2 games. So if he makes shots, I don't see how you defend that team, because then Gobert or whoever has to be out in the corner on Gordon, and Jokic is allowed to play one-on-one basketball in the middle of the floor, and that's just, you're not going to beat Denver allowing them to play that way. Like, yes, maybe you could say let Jokic try to score. I know that was the wisdom at times last playoff run. Like, yeah, let Jokic try to score 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, and just hug on the other guys. And he mostly did that when he was asked to and needed to during the finals run last season. So I am curious to see how Minnesota reacts tonight. I tend to think after they took home court advantage back that Denver's got this.
No, it might be 6. It might be a 6-game series.
I can see that. And also they get good contributions from the likes of Justin Holiday coming off the bench. You didn't count on him all season. He comes in and knocks down 3 big 3-pointers in that game to stretch the lead. You get a big one from Reggie Jackson, who we've seen in the playoffs before have some success. So that's what you need as a team. As we talk about the team building, you need those shots to fall. Last season, we go back to that Game 6, Derek. You know, you always bring it up for me because that's always the one that I go back to.
The first 3 months you were on the show, we couldn't have the conversation about Tobias Harris and be like, can you believe Game 6 against the Celtics?
1 for 3, man. 1 for 4, whatever he went. But it was also those DeAnthony Melton shots that did not fall in that fourth quarter of those non-Embiid minutes with James Harden out there on the floor that could have changed where we are right now and looking at the 76ers because those shots didn't fall. The shots are falling for those role players with Denver for someone like Justin Holiday. Finally, we talked about Bronny James a lot yesterday. They had some combine work done in the shooting skills.
Shot the heck out of the ball.
19 for 25.
I'm always convinced by an NBA player shooting in an empty gym.
Yes.
Always wins me over.
19 for 25. Don't take away his good shooting, Derek. Shepard also shot the ball well. Not a surprise from Kentucky.
His athletic scores were also very good.
And you also mentioned Devin Carter. He measured out well.
I believe he broke the 3/4 court sprint record at the Combine was his big thing yesterday.
So this was the thing, 19 for 25 in the empty gym. These players typically work out by themselves when they go to these teams also. And we said it yesterday. Bronny James is going to have some of these individual workouts with teams, and somebody may be intrigued enough to say, all right,
why not?
I've seen enough.
Yeah.
And when you shoot the ball like that.
Look, here's what I'll say. So obviously I covered the draft for a number of years for USA Today and Draft Express.
Yes.
And the Combine's important, in part the measurements, the athletic testing, lane drills and agility and whatnot. All that's important. Interviews are the most important. Not once did I ever move a player up or down my board based on how they shot in one of those combine drills. Not a single time.
Taking away his shooting again.
Is it something that you're going to talk about now because it happened? Sure.
Derek doesn't care about shooting, my column.
Especially if it is if you're into the draft or your team's invest in the draft. Combine's a big deal. Not once in my entire career did I ever go, oh, wow, he shot the ball well that day. Let me reevaluate that.
That's right. In May.
Somebody, Jay the Jungle in the chat asked if we saw Edie run. And I know I had this conversation with you yesterday. I wish I remembered who tweeted this. So
I saw it.
Forgive me, whoever tweeted it, that I'm borrowing this from you. Someone quote tweeted the video of Edie sprinting with the line from the Adam Sandler golf movie that I won't spoil the name because it looked like his former boss where he yells, I believe that belongs to Mr. Gilmore. Like that's what it looked like him running. So if you've seen the movie, you know.
I saw the video and I started laughing because it's 7'4" dude running like that. It just looks weird in the first place. But folks, we appreciate it. The chat has been live as always, and we certainly appreciate that during the off season as we get things started. And we'll be here, as you know, let everybody know, 2:30 every day, Monday through Friday here in the off season. Of course, things could change depending on specific things throughout the off season as we get closer to the draft and then free agency. But our schedule for the summer, 2:30 Monday through Friday. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell another friend.
Well, everyone, as always, I'd like to thank you wonderful people for being here. I'd like to thank Cannoli, Jay of the Jungle,
Holy cannoli.
Guard Mello, Khalil.
Garmello just said Bronny equals Melton.
Wow. Bootzilla, Lost Sleep.
Boots!
Lost Sleep TV, Randy Rubart, our guy Al.
Randy, what up? What up, Al?
2-minute warning. Maine, Alex McCoy, my guy Will, who, by the way, I saw you ask if I'm rooting for Man City or Tottenham today. I am rooting for the Meteor, my friend. That's what I say in those situations.
What up, Will?
Eugene Ross.
Gene, what's happening?
Shedfa, Trust the Pieces, Tyler. Did I say Alex McCoy? If I didn't, I'm saying it again. Elaine Bruno,
What up,
TN.
Elaine?
Who else we got here, ladies and gentlemen? Coach Lowell Ricketts.
Coach, what up?
Mateus, maybe. I'm my own Yam Snow.
Why did I think that was going somewhere?
That was Daryl Morey's. I think that was Daryl Morey's Yams, but changing their name, I'm not sure. Unconfirmed. We'll find out at a later date. Neil, Ken Wilson.
What up, Neil?
You better love somebody.
Gotta love somebody.
Kevin Washington and my girl Winona. Thank you to everybody who's here
Nona.
today. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell icon so you can get notifications each and every time we go live. And if you hit the thumbs up button, no matter how you feel about Kyle Kuzma, that outcome will come true for the Sixers. I almost guarantee it. We will see you.
Real fast, don't forget after we're done, the Phillies post game against the Mets.
And I see there's something going on in that game.
Top of the ninth
Well,
right now, still leading. So make sure after we're done, you go check out the PHLY Phillies post game show.
Absolutely do that. And thank you.
Thank you,
Super
Bree.
Producer Bree. We'll catch you tomorrow, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.